My sister called and said, "Don't come to Christmas dinner. It's for family only." And my mother laughed in the background. The words hit me like ice water. I stood frozen in my tiny Seattle apartment, phone pressed against my ear, the cheerful jingle bells from my neighbor's radio suddenly sounding like mockery. "Emma, are you still there?" Victoria's voice carried that familiar edge of impatience, like I was wasting her precious time just by existing. "My name is Emma Chen, and I'm 29 years old. 23 years ago, the Morrison family adopted me after my parents died in a house fire. 23 years of being reminded that adoption was charity, not love. But I thought..." My voice came out smaller than I wanted. "I always come to Christmas dinner." "Well, this year we're keeping it intimate. Just actual family members. You understand?" Victoria's tone suggested this should be obvious, reasonable even. I heard movement on her end, then my mother Patricia's voice floating through the speaker, bright and careless. "Victoria's right, Emma dear. It'll be cozier this way, just us. Just us, meaning everyone but me." "What about the presents?" I asked stupidly, thinking of the gifts I'd already bought and wrapped. Expensive gifts I couldn't really afford, but I'd bought them anyway, because I was always trying to prove I belonged. "Oh, you can drop those off beforehand if you want," Victoria said dismissively. "Maybe the 23rd? We'll be busy on Christmas Eve with preparations. Preparations I wouldn't be part of, a dinner I wouldn't attend, a family I'd never really been part of." "Does Dad know about this?" I asked, grasping for something, anything. Victoria's laugh was sharp. "Whose idea do you think it was?" The call ended. No goodbye, no sorry, no acknowledgement that she'd just shattered what little family I thought I had. I sank onto my second-hand couch, staring at the small Christmas tree I'd set up in the corner. It looked pathetic now, the lights blinking cheerfully while my world crumbled. This shouldn't have surprised me. The signs had always been there. Growing up, Victoria got the master bedroom with the bay windows. I got the converted storage room in the basement, where the heating barely worked, and I could hear the water pipes groaning all night. Victoria got a car for her 16th birthday, a shiny red Mazda with a bow on top. I got a bus pass and told to be grateful. When Victoria graduated high school, they threw a party with catering and a live band. When I graduated top of my class, we went to Olive Garden, and my mother spent the entire dinner talking about Victoria's new boyfriend. College was worse. Victoria attended USC on the family dime, living in a sorority house, coming home with stories of formals and spring breaks in Cabo. I went to community college, working 3 jobs to pay for it myself because we've already stretched the budget so much for Victoria, Emma. You understand? I always understood. I was always grateful. I was always trying to earn my place at their table. And now, they were telling me I'd never had a place to begin with. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother David. Heard about Christmas, probably for the best. Less awkward for everyone. Less awkward. As if my presence was the problem, not their cruelty. I should mention what I do for a living. I'm a freelance graphic designer, scraping by in Seattle's expensive market. I'm good at what I do, really good, but I'm not rich. I live in a 400-square-foot studio in a neighborhood the Morrisons would never visit. I eat ramen more often than I'd like to admit. I'm paying off student loans that will probably outlive me. The Morrisons, meanwhile, live in a 5-bedroom house in Bellevue, one of Seattle's wealthiest suburbs. Richard Morrison owns a successful insurance company. Patricia volunteers at charity galas and drinks wine that costs more than my monthly rent. Victoria married a tech executive and lives in a mansion in Medina. David works in finance and drives a Tesla. And I'm the family embarrassment. The adopted daughter who didn't quite measure up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the phone call, my mother's laughter, Victoria's casual cruelty, David's text. The message was clear. I wasn't wanted. At 2 a.m., I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out the box from my closet, the one containing everything I had left from my biological parents. There wasn't much. A few photos, some letters, my mother's jade bracelet, my father's watch, and a business card, worn and faded, for a woman named Helen Chen, my grandmother, my biological grandmother. After my parents died, Helen had tried to get custody of me, but she was a recent immigrant, working long hours at a restaurant, living in a small apartment. The Morrisons, with their big house and stable income, looked better on paper. The court chose them. Helen had tried to stay in my life. She'd called, sent cards, asked to visit, but the Morrisons made it difficult. They'd schedule things during her requested visit times. They'd forget to give me her messages. They'd tell me she was too busy, that I shouldn't bother her. Eventually, the contact stopped. I was 8 years old when I received her last card. I'd believed what the Morrisons told me, that Helen had moved on, that she didn't really want the burden of a grandchild. Now, at 29, I wondered if that had been true. The business card was for a restaurant. Golden Dragon, authentic Chinese cuisine. An address in Seattle's International District. A phone number. Would it still be valid after 21 years? I picked up my phone before I could talk myself out of it. My hands shook as I dialed. It rang 4 times. Then a voice, older but warm. Golden Dragon, how may I help you? I'm looking for Helen Chen, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. A pause. This is Helen. Who's calling? I swallowed hard. It's Emma. Emma Chen, your granddaughter. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then I heard a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Emma? My Emma? Is it really you? Yes, I said, and suddenly I was crying, tears streaming down my face. Yes, it's me. Oh, my sweet girl. I've waited so long. So long. We talked for 2 hours. Helen told me how she'd never stopped looking for me, how she'd tried to contact me once I turned 18, but the Morrisons had told her I didn't want to see her. How she'd respected that, thinking I'd chosen them over her, when in reality I'd never received her messages. I told her everything. The basement room, the hand-me-downs, the exclusion, the constant reminder that I was different, lesser, not really family. And finally, the phone call about Christmas. Come here, Helen said firmly. Come to me for Christmas. I'll make all your favorite dishes. Remember the dumplings I used to make when you were little? I did remember, vaguely. A woman, with kind eyes and flour on her hands, letting me help press the wrappers. I have a business proposition too, Helen continued. The restaurant is doing well now. Very well. I could use someone with design skills. New menus, marketing materials, a website redesign. I'll pay you properly, not family discount. Professional rates. Grandma, you don't have to. I want to. Let me help you, Emma. Let me be the family they never were. 3 days later, I met Helen at the Golden Dragon. The restaurant was in a busy part of the International District, with red lanterns hanging outside and the smell of ginger and garlic wafting through the air. Helen looked older than in my childhood memories, her hair silver now, her face lined. But her eyes were the same, warm and welcoming. She opened her arms and I walked into them, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, like I was home. Let me show you around, she said, pride in her voice. The Golden Dragon wasn't the small, struggling restaurant I remembered. It was thriving, packed with customers even on a Wednesday afternoon. Helen had expanded, taking over the spaces on either side. The decor was elegant, mixing traditional and modern elements. You did all this? I asked, amazed. 21 years of hard work, Helen said. After I lost you, I poured everything into this place. It became successful, very successful. I kept thinking, someday Emma will come back, and I'll have something to offer her. She led me to a small office in the back. I want to show you something. Helen pulled out a folder, thick with papers. Inside were newspaper clippings, printed Facebook photos, anything she could find about me over the years. My high school graduation photo, an article about a design competition I'd won, a LinkedIn screenshot of my freelance business. I've been watching, she said softly, always watching, always hoping you'd come back to me. My throat was tight. The Morrisons said you didn't want me. They lied, Emma. They wanted to keep you under their control. And they knew if you had me, you'd realize you deserved better. Over the next week, I spent every day at the Golden Dragon. Helen put me to work redesigning the menu, creating a new logo, building a modern website. She paid me $15,000 up front, more money than I'd made in the last 3 months combined. But more than the money, she gave me something I'd been starving for. Acknowledgement. She praised my work, asked my opinion, treated me like I mattered. You're so talented, she said, looking at the menu designs. Just like your mother. She was artistic too. She told me stories about my parents I'd never heard, how they'd met in college, both studying art, how my father had proposed with a ring he'd designed himself, how my mother had painted murals in my nursery, dreaming of the life we'd have together. The Morrisons had never told me any of this. They'd treated my biological family like an embarrassing secret, something to be buried and forgotten. December 23rd arrived, the day Victoria had told me to drop off their presents. I looked at the wrapped gifts in my apartment, a cashmere scarf for Patricia, an expensive whiskey for Richard, a designer wallet for David, a Kate Spade handbag for Victoria. I'd spent over $800 total, money I didn't have, charged to credit cards I couldn't afford. I thought about dropping them off as instructed, playing my role one last time. The grateful adopted daughter, begging for scraps of affection. Then I looked at my phone, at the photos Helen had sent me. Us cooking together. Her teaching me how to make dumplings. The two of us laughing in the restaurant. I'd found my real family. I didn't need their table scraps anymore. I packed up all the gifts and drove to a women's shelter, donating everything. The woman at the desk looked at the designer items with wide eyes. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Completely sure," I said. Then I sent a group text to the Morrison family. "I won't be dropping off presents. Have a wonderful family Christmas. Emma." Victoria called immediately. I declined. She called again, declined again. Then came the texts. "What do you mean you're not dropping off presents?" "Emma, don't be childish. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." I blocked all of them and drove to the Golden Dragon, where Helen was waiting with a smile and a job offer. "I want you to be my business partner," she said. 50-50 ownership. I'm getting older, Emma. I need someone I trust to take over eventually. Someone family. Grandma, I can't accept. You can and you will. I've already talked to my lawyer. The papers are being drawn up. This restaurant, everything I've built, it's yours. It was always meant to be yours. I cried then, overwhelmed by the generosity, the love, the feeling of finally being chosen. Christmas Eve at the Golden Dragon was magical. Helen had closed the restaurant to customers and filled it with her friends, her employees, people who'd become her family over the years. They welcomed me with open arms, asking about my work, interested in my life. No one made me feel like an obligation. No one reminded me I was adopted. No one treated me like I should be grateful just to be there. I belonged. Helen raised a glass of plum wine. To my granddaughter Emma, who I lost but never stopped loving. Welcome home. Everyone cheered, and I felt something break open in my chest. Years of pain, of trying, to earn love that should have been freely given, of believing I was fundamentally unworthy. It all crumbled away, replaced by this: being wanted, being valued, being loved. My phone buzzed with another text. Patricia this time, from a number I hadn't blocked yet. Emma, this is ridiculous. You're embarrassing yourself. Come drop off the presents and apologize for this tantrum. I showed the text to Helen. She read it, her face hardening. Those people, she said quietly. They don't deserve you. They never did. I know, I said. I finally know. I typed out a response. I'm spending Christmas with my real family, the one that actually wants me. Merry Christmas, Patricia. Then I blocked the number and turned off my phone. Christmas morning, I woke up in Helen's apartment above the restaurant. She'd insisted I stay over, making up the guest room with soft blankets and pillows that smelled like jasmine. The smell of cooking drew me to the kitchen, where Helen was preparing a feast. Dumplings, roast duck, sticky rice, all the dishes my parents used to make. I thought we could honor them today, Helen said softly. Your mother and father. They'd be so proud of you, Emma. We spent the day cooking together, Helen teaching me family recipes, telling me stories. She showed me photos I'd never seen, videos of my parents laughing and dancing. Why didn't the Morrisons tell me any of this? I asked. Helen's expression darkened. Because they wanted you to forget. Wanted you to believe they were saving you from nothing, that you should be grateful. But your parents were wonderful people, Emma. Talented, kind, full of life. You come from love. That evening, we opened presents. Helen had gotten me thoughtful gifts, a jade bracelet that had belonged to my mother, a leather portfolio for my design work, a framed photo of my parents on their wedding day. I'd made her a custom illustration of the golden dragon, incorporating elements of our family history. She cried when she saw it. This is beautiful, she whispered. You have such a gift. We were finishing dinner when someone knocked on the restaurant's door downstairs, loud and insistent. Helen and I exchanged glances. We're closed, she called out. Emma, I know you're in there. Victoria's voice sharp and angry. Open this door right now. My stomach dropped. How had she found me? Don't, Helen said firmly. You don't owe her anything. But Victoria wouldn't stop knocking, her shouts growing louder. You ungrateful brat. After everything we did for you. I walked to the top of the stairs, Helen behind me, protective. Through the glass door, I could see not just Victoria, but my entire adoptive family. Patricia, Richard, David, all of them standing in the cold, looking furious and ridiculous in their expensive Christmas clothes. What do you want? I called down. We want to talk, Patricia said, her voice strained. Emma, this has gone far enough. Come outside. I'm spending Christmas with my grandmother, I said. My real grandmother. You should go home. Your real grandmother? Richard laughed harshly. Emma, stop being dramatic. That woman is nothing to you. Helen's hand found mine, squeezing gently. She's everything you never were, I said, loud enough for them to hear. She's family. We're your family, Victoria shouted. We raised you. You raised me? The anger I'd swallowed for 23 years finally erupted. You put me in a basement and gave me your hand-me-downs. You spent my college fund on yourselves. You made me feel worthless every single day. And then you uninvited me from Christmas because I'm not blood? That's not raising someone. That's tolerating them. Patricia's face was turning red. We gave you a home. We could have left you in foster care. You took me because it made you look good, I shot back. Charitable, generous Patricia Morrison, rescuing a poor orphan. But you never loved me. You just wanted credit for saving me. That's not true, Patricia protested, but her voice wavered. Isn't it? When was the last time you asked about my life? About my work? When was the last time you celebrated something I did? You don't even know what I do for a living, do you? Silence. You're a designer? David ventured. See? I said. 23 years, and you don't even know the basics. Helen spoke then, her voice carrying authority. You need to leave. Emma doesn't want you here. She's made that clear. And who are you? Richard Ian demanded. Her real grandmother? Where were you when she needed raising? I tried, Helen said, steel in her voice. You made sure I couldn't. You kept her from me, told her lies, made her believe I didn't want her. But I never stopped loving her. Never stopped hoping she'd come back. This is ridiculous, Victoria said. Emma, stop this tantrum and come home. I am home, I said simply. I closed the curtain, blocking them from view. Their shouts continued for a few more minutes, then faded. Through the window, I watched them drive away, leaving me in peace. Helen pulled me into a hug. You did well, my brave girl. That night, Helen told me something I hadn't expected. The restaurant is worth $8 million, she said quietly. And I have investments, properties, about 12 million total. I stared at her, stunned. Grandma, I don't... It's all going to you, Emma. You're my only family. I've already updated my will. But more than that, I want you working with me now, learning the business. This is yours, whether I'm here or not. $20 million. A thriving business. A grandmother who loved me. I'd lost a family that never wanted me and gained everything I'd ever needed. The Morrisons called and texted for days. First angry, then pleading, then angry again. I blocked every number, every email, every social media account. 3 months later, the Golden Dragon's new website launched. My design work. It was featured in Seattle Magazine as one of the city's best restaurant sites, bringing in a flood of new customers. Helen put my name on everything. Website design by Emma Chen, creative director. She was proud of me in a way the Morrisons never had been. She showed everyone my work, bragged about my talents, made sure people knew I was hers. I moved into an apartment in the International District, close to the restaurant. It was small but mine, paid for with money I'd earned doing work I was proud of. 6 months after that Christmas, Helen legally adopted me. At 29, I was adopted again, but this time by choice, by someone who truly wanted me. The paperwork arrived on a Tuesday. Helen Chen and Emma Chen, it read. Legal parent and child. I cried reading it, but this time from joy. The Morrisons sent one final message through a lawyer. They wanted me to know I was making a mistake, that I'd regret abandoning my family, that I'd always be their daughter whether I liked it or not. Helen's lawyer responded with a cease and desist. A year. After that Christmas phone call, the Golden Dragon expanded again. We opened a second location, then a third. I handled all the branding, the marketing, the design work. We were featured in national food magazines. Food bloggers raved about us. We were successful, genuinely successful. And through it all, Helen was there. Proud and supportive. Everything a parent should be. I heard through mutual acquaintances that the Morrisons were shocked by my success. Apparently, Victoria had told everyone I'd fallen on hard times, that I was barely surviving. They'd expected me to fail, to come crawling back. Instead, I thrived. 2 years after that phone call, Helen's health began failing. The doctors said she had maybe a year, possibly less. We spent that time working together, laughing together, making up for all the years we'd lost. "I'm not afraid," she told me one evening. "I got you back. That's all I wanted." "I love you, Grandma," I said, holding her hand. "I love you too, my Emma. My beautiful, talented, strong Emma. Your parents would be so proud." When Helen passed, she left me everything. The restaurants, the properties, the investments, all of it. The Morrisons didn't even know to contest it, because they'd never known about Helen, about what I'd built. At the funeral, I stood alone at first. Then Helen's friends surrounded me, employees who'd become family, regular customers who'd watched me grow into my role. They hugged me, told me stories about Helen, reminded me I wasn't alone. The Morrisons didn't come. They weren't invited. 3 years after that Christmas phone call, I was a successful businesswoman running a restaurant empire worth over $30 million. I'd been featured in Forbes' 30 Under 30. My design work had won awards. And I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. I never spoke to the Morrisons again. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Victoria had never made that phone call. If they'd let me come to Christmas dinner. If they'd continued, letting me hover on the edges of their family. I probably would have stayed. Would have kept trying to earn their love, kept diminishing myself to fit into their world. That phone call was the best gift Victoria ever gave me. She forced me to see what I'd refused to acknowledge. I was never going to be enough for them because they'd never wanted me to be. But I was always enough for Helen. And eventually, I became enough for myself. On Christmas Eve, 4 years after that phone call, I stood in the Golden Dragon's main dining room. It was decorated beautifully, my design work evident in every detail. The restaurant was closed for a private party, my party. Helen's old friends, my employees, people who'd become my chosen family over the years. I raised a glass of plum wine, the way Helen used to. "To family," I said. "Not the one we're born into, but the one we choose, the one that chooses us back." Everyone cheered. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then curiosity got the better of me. It was Victoria. "Merry Christmas, Emma. I hope you're happy with what you've chosen." I smiled and typed back, "I am. Happier than you'll ever know." Then I blocked the number and rejoined my real family, the one that had been waiting for me all along. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something beautiful from the ashes of rejection and watching your life flourish while they're left wondering what happened. That Christmas phone call didn't break me. It freed me. And for that, I'll always be grateful. 5 years after that phone call, I was standing in my own restaurant, the flagship Golden Dragon that Helen and I had transformed together before she passed. It was December 15th again, and the memory of Victoria's words still echoed sometimes, but now they felt distant, like something that had happened to a different person. Because in a way, it had. That Emma, the one who'd begged for scraps of affection, who'd made herself small to fit into spaces that were never meant for her, she didn't exist anymore. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Emma Chen?" A male voice, professional. "Speaking." "This is James Porter from Morrison & Associates Insurance. I'm calling regarding Richard Morrison's estate." My heart skipped. Estate? "I'm sorry to inform you that Mr. Morrison passed away 3 days ago. Heart attack. I'm handling the distribution of assets and, well, there's been a development." I sat down, my legs suddenly weak. Richard was dead. My adoptive father, the man who'd barely looked at me for 23 years, was gone. "What kind of development?" I asked carefully. "It seems Mr. Morrison left a letter with his attorney. It was only to be opened upon his death. In it he made some allegations about his family's treatment of you, and requested that you be present at the reading of the will. Me? Why? The letter doesn't specify, but he was insistent. The reading is tomorrow at 2 p.m. I can email you the address. I hung up, my mind racing. Richard Morrison wanted me at his will reading? After everything? That evening, I called my therapist, Dr. Sarah Kim. I'd started therapy 2 years ago, working through the trauma of my childhood, the rejection, the years of emotional abuse. What do you think I should do? I asked. What do you want to do? She countered, as therapists do. Part of me wants to go. To see their faces. To show them what I've become. And the other part? The other part wants nothing to do with them ever again. Both responses are valid, Emma. You don't owe them anything, not even closure. But if you think seeing them might help you, then go. Just protect yourself. The next day I dressed in my best business suit, the kind Helen would have been proud of. Elegant, professional, expensive. I looked like the successful businesswoman I was. The law office was in downtown, Seattle, all glass and steel and power. The receptionist directed me to a conference room on the 15th floor. When I walked in, the entire Morrison family was already there. Patricia sat at the head of the table, her face drawn and aged. She'd lost weight, her expensive clothes hanging loose on her frame. Victoria was next to her, designer handbag clutched in her lap like a shield. David sat across from them, his tie loosened, dark circles under his eyes. They all looked at me, and I saw the shock on their faces. I looked good. Better than good. My hair was professionally styled, my suit tailored, my confidence evident. I was nothing like the broken girl who used to beg for their approval. Emma, Patricia said, her voice cracking. You came. Mr. Morrison requested my presence, I said coolly. I'm here out of respect for the dead, not for any of you. Victoria's face flushed red. You have some nerve showing up here after... After what? I interrupted. After you told me not to. Come to Christmas dinner because I wasn't real family. After you spent my entire childhood making me feel worthless. Please, enlighten me. The attorney, a stern man named George Winters, cleared his throat. Perhaps we should begin. Ms. Chen, please sit. I took the seat farthest from the Morrisons, maintaining my distance. George opened a folder. Richard Morrison's last will and testament, revised 6 months before his passing. He was very specific about how he wanted this handled. Patricia was already crying, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. He was so sick at the end, probably not thinking clearly. On the contrary, George said, Mr. Morrison was examined by 3 separate physicians who confirmed his sound mind and decision-making capacity. He knew exactly what he was doing. He began reading. Standard items first, specific belongings, charitable donations, then the main assets. To my wife, Patricia Morrison, I leave the house in Bellevue and a monthly allowance of $5,000 for the remainder of her life. Patricia's face went white. Monthly allowance? What about the rest? If you'll let me continue, George said sternly. To my daughter Victoria Morrison Chen, I leave $50,000 to be paid in a lump sum. Victoria stood up, her chair scraping loudly. 50,000? That's it? The estate is worth millions. Sit down, Ms. Morrison Chen, George said. To my son David Morrison, I leave $50,000 to be paid in a lump sum. David's face was red. This is insane. Dad, wouldn't... I assure you, he did. Now, to Emma Chen, formerly Emma Morrison. The room went silent. I leave the remainder of my estate, including all business holdings, investment accounts, properties, and assets, totaling approximately $8.7 million. The explosion was immediate. Victoria shrieked. Patricia collapsed in her chair. David slammed his fist on the table. "This is fraud," Victoria screamed. "She manipulated him." "I haven't spoken to Richard in 5 years," I said calmly. "I didn't even know he was sick." George pulled out another envelope. "Mr. Morrison anticipated your reaction. He left this letter, to be read aloud in the event of contestation." He began reading in Richard's voice, committed to paper. "To my family, if you're hearing this, it's because you're contesting my will. I expected nothing less. You've always been predictable in your selfishness. I'm leaving the bulk of my estate to Emma, because she's the only one of you who deserves it. She's the only one who built something of herself without my money, without my connections, without my help. Victoria, you've been living off my money your entire life. Even your marriage to a successful tech executive was arranged by connections I provided. You've never worked a real day in your life. David, your job at the investment firm? I bought you that position. Your fancy apartment? My money. Your Tesla? My money. You're a mediocre man coasting on my name. Patricia, you've enabled all of this. You've raised our children to be entitled parasites, and you turned Emma into a scapegoat for your own inadequacies as a mother. I was complicit in this. I admit that. I let you all treat Emma like she was less than, like she should be grateful for the scraps we threw her way. I told myself it didn't matter, that she'd be fine, that she was resilient. But 6 months ago, I saw Emma's interview in Forbes magazine. I read about what she'd accomplished, how she'd built a restaurant empire from nothing, how she'd found her real grandmother and created the family she deserved. I realized then what a profound failure I'd been, not as a businessman, but as a father. I'd adopted a grieving child, and instead of loving her, I'd let my family treat her like a burden. And she'd thrived anyway, not because of us, but in spite of us. Emma, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. These words are inadequate, and they come too late, but they're true. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I'm sorry I didn't see your worth until you'd already proven it to the world. I'm sorry I was a coward. This money won't make up for what we did to you, but it's yours. You earned it by being everything my biological children never were. Hardworking, resilient, kind, and genuine. To Victoria, David, and Patricia, you're getting exactly what you earned. Take your $50,000 each and try, for once in your lives, to build something yourselves. Maybe you'll understand what Emma's known all along, that real worth isn't inherited, it's created. Richard Morrison. The silence in the room was deafening. Patricia was openly sobbing. Victoria looked like she might vomit. David had gone pale, his hands shaking. I sat very still, processing Richard's words. An apology, acknowledgement, validation of everything I'd endured. It felt hollow and right at the same time. This isn't legal, Victoria said weakly. We'll contest it. You can try, George said. But Mr. Morrison had this will reviewed by 4 separate attorneys. It's ironclad. Additionally, he left documentation of the $750,000 trust fund that was supposed to be used for Emma's care, which financial records show was spent on the biological children's education and lifestyle. My head snapped up. What? George looked at me sympathetically. You didn't know? Your biological parents left a substantial trust fund to ensure you'd be cared for. The Morrisons had access to it as your legal guardians. They spent it all within 8 years. The betrayal cut deeper than anything else. They hadn't just treated me poorly, they'd stolen from me, profited from my loss. That's theft, I said quietly. Yes, George agreed. Mr. Morrison documented everything before he died. He wanted you to have the full picture. He also wanted you to know that this is why his estate is larger than anyone realized. He'd been saving, investing, building it up specifically to leave to you. He called it Restitution. Patricia found her voice. Emma, please. We're still family. Your father clearly wasn't thinking straight at the end. We can work this out. Split everything fairly. Fairly? The word came out like a laugh. You want to talk about fair? Where was fair when you put me in the basement? When you spent my trust fund on Victoria's sorority fees and David's MBA? When you uninvited me from Christmas dinner because I wasn't real family? We made mistakes, Patricia pleaded. But we raised you. We gave you a home. You gave me a prison, I said. And you charged me rent, indignity, and self-worth. I stood up, ready to leave this room and these people behind forever. Emma, wait, David said. For the first time, he sounded genuine. I'm sorry, for all of it. You deserved better. I looked at him, this brother who'd ignored me for decades, who'd texted that my exclusion was less awkward for everyone. You're right, I did deserve better, but I found it, without any of you. Victoria wasn't done. You're going to take everything? Leave your own family with nothing? You're getting $50,000 each. That's more than I ever got from this family. And you're not my family. You never were. I turned to George. What do I need to do to accept the inheritance? Sign these papers. I'll handle the rest. I signed quickly, decisively. Emma Chen, written in confident strokes. There's one more thing, George said. Mr. Morrison left you a personal letter. Private, not to be read aloud. He handed me an envelope. My name on the front, in Richard's handwriting. I took it, but didn't open it. Not here, not in front of them. We're done here, I said. George, please send all correspondence to my attorney. I handed him my business card. I don't want any direct contact with the Morrison family. Emma, please! Patricia stood, reaching for me. I stepped back. Don't touch me. You lost that right years ago. I walked out of that conference room with my head high, the inheritance papers in my bag, and the sound of Victoria's angry sobs following me down the hall. In my car, I finally opened Richard's personal letter. Emma, I'm writing this while I still can, while my mind is clear and my hands steady. The doctors say I have maybe 3 months. Cancer, aggressive and terminal. Fitting, really. A rot from the inside out. I could fill pages with apologies, but they'd all be insufficient. How do you apologize for 23 years of cruelty by omission? For watching your family torture a child and doing nothing? I told myself you were resilient, that you'd be fine, that a little adversity would make you stronger. But I was really just taking the easy path. It was easier to let Patricia and Victoria have their way than to stand up for you. Easier to pretend you were fine than to acknowledge what we were doing to you. I'm a coward, Emma. I always have been. But I want you to know something. I saw you. Not often enough. Not when it mattered. But I saw you. I saw you studying at 2 a.m. for exams while Victoria slept peacefully in her expensive room. I saw you working 3 jobs while David partied through college on my dime. I saw you build a business from nothing while my biological children coasted on my name. I saw your strength, your determination, your refusal to be broken by us. And I hated myself for it. Every achievement you made without us was a reminder of how badly we'd failed you. When I read about your success in Forbes, something in me broke. Or maybe it finally healed. I realized I had one chance to do something right by you, one opportunity to give you what you should have had all along: recognition, support, and restitution. This money doesn't erase what we did. Nothing can. But it's yours by right. Your biological parents' trust fund should have been yours. The love and support we owed you should have been yours. This inheritance is just a fraction of what you're owed. I hope you use it to keep building the empire you've created. I hope you continue being exactly who you are. Strong, talented, kind despite every reason not to be. I hope someday you can forgive me, though I don't deserve it. I hope you're happy, Emma. You deserve that most of all. With regret and respect, Richard. I sat in my car, reading the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't enough. It could never be enough. But it was something. Acknowledgement. Truth. And the money, $8.7 million, it was justice. That evening, I met with my attorney, Marcus Chen, a sharp woman who'd helped me with the restaurant expansions. "This is going to get messy," she said, reviewing the inheritance papers. "The Morrisons will fight this." "Let them," I said. "I have Richard's documentation, his letter, 3 medical evaluations proving his sound mind. What do they have?" "Desperation," Marcus said, "which can be dangerous." She was right. Over the next 2 weeks, the Morrisons launched a full assault. Victoria hired an investigator to dig into my past, looking for anything to discredit me. Patricia gave tearful interviews to local news, painting herself as a bereaved widow being robbed by an ungrateful adoptee. David tried the sympathetic approach, calling my phone repeatedly, leaving messages about family and forgiveness. I blocked them all and let Marcus handle it. The media attention was intense. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire heiress cuts out biological family," and "Adopted daughter inherits millions, real children get nothing." The comment sections were brutal, divided between those who thought I was a gold digger and those who saw the Morrisons for what they were. Then someone leaked Richard's letter. I don't know who, maybe George's office, maybe someone at the courthouse. But suddenly the full text was online. Richard's words about his family's cruelty, his acknowledgement of my strength, his desire for restitution. The narrative shifted overnight. Victoria's investigator found nothing because there was nothing to find. My business was legitimate, my success earned. Every contract, every client, every dollar was documented and clean. Patricia's interviews became laughable once people read Richard's letter. News anchors started asking harder questions. "Mrs. Morrison, why did your husband feel the need to document your family's treatment of Emma? Can you explain the missing trust fund money? Why did Emma feel unwelcome at family gatherings?" Patricia's answers were weak, evasive. She looked like what she was, a woman who'd been caught. David gave up first. He released a statement saying he respected his father's wishes and wouldn't contest the will. I suspected his lawyer had told him he had no case, but Victoria wouldn't quit. She filed motion after motion, delaying the inheritance transfer. She claimed undue influence, despite the fact that I hadn't seen Richard in 5 years. She claimed mental incapacity, despite 3 medical evaluations. She claimed fraud, despite mountains of documentation. Every motion was denied. 6 months after Richard's death, Victoria's final appeal was rejected. The judge's ruling was scathing. The evidence overwhelmingly supports Mr. Morrison's testamentary capacity and intentions. The contestants' repeated frivolous motions appear motivated by greed rather than genuine concern for proper estate distribution. Further contests will be considered vexatious litigation. The inheritance was mine, officially and irrevocably. $8.7 million transferred into my accounts. Combined with the restaurant empire's value, I was worth over $40 million now. But the money wasn't the victory. The victory was the validation. Richard's acknowledgement that I'd been wronged. The court's recognition that the Morrisons' claims were baseless. The public's eventual understanding of what had really happened in that family. I was vindicated. Victoria's life fell apart spectacularly. Her husband divorced her, tired of her obsession with my inheritance. Her friends distanced themselves. She'd spent so much on lawyers that she burned through her $50,000 in months. Last I heard, She was working retail and living in a studio apartment, still bitter, still blaming me for her downfall. Patricia survived on her $5,000 monthly allowance, a fraction of what she was used to. The Bellevue house, too expensive to maintain, was sold. She moved to a modest condo, her social circle evaporating when the money did. David managed better. He actually got a real job, one he earned himself, and seemed to be learning what work meant. He sent me one email, months after the dust settled. "You were right about everything. I'm sorry." I didn't respond. Some apologies are too late. 1 year after Richard's death, I stood in the newest Golden Dragon location, our 5th restaurant. This one was in San Francisco, elegant and modern, a tribute to Helen's vision and my design work. The opening night was packed with food critics, influencers, and people who'd followed my story. They came for the drama but stayed for the food, for the atmosphere, for the undeniable success. A reporter approached me. "Emma, how does it feel to be here after everything that happened?" I thought about that phone call 6 years ago. Victoria's voice. "Don't come to Christmas dinner. It's for family only." My mother's laughter in the background. "It feels like justice," I said. "Not revenge, justice." They spent 23 years trying to make me small, and I responded by becoming everything they said I couldn't be. "What would you say to them now if you could?" I smiled. "Thank you. Thank you for showing me I didn't need you. Thank you for pushing me away so I could find my real family. Thank you for that phone call because it freed me to become this." The article ran with the headline, "From Rejection to Empire: How Emma Chen Turned Family Cruelty into a $40 million Success Story." Patricia sent a letter through her lawyer, not contesting anything, just asking if we could talk. I threw it away unread. Victoria tried to friend me on social media under a fake name. I blocked it immediately. David sent Christmas cards every year. I never opened them. They wanted closure, forgiveness, some kind of reconciliation. But I didn't owe them that. I didn't owe them anything. 5 years after Richard's death, I was featured on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine. The headline, "Building an Empire from Scratch: Emma Chen's Journey from Adoption to Success." The article detailed everything: my childhood, the rejection, Helen's love, the restaurant empire, Richard's inheritance, and what I'd done with it. I'd invested heavily in organizations supporting adopted children. I'd created scholarships for adoptees pursuing entrepreneurship. I'd funded legal aid for kids trapped in abusive adoptive situations. I'd turned my pain into purpose. The article ended with a quote from me. "Family isn't who you're born to or who adopts you. Family is who shows up, who supports you, who celebrates your success and holds you through failure." Didn't have that for 23 years, but I found it eventually. And now I'm trying to help other kids find it too. The magazine sold out in days. My inbox flooded with messages from adoptees sharing their stories, thanking me for speaking out, asking for advice. I answered as many as I could. I understood their pain because I'd lived it. 10 years after that phone call, I was 39 years old, standing in Helen's old apartment above the original Golden Dragon. I'd kept it exactly as she'd left it, a shrine to the woman who'd saved me. It was Christmas Eve. The restaurant below was closed for a private party. My party. My real family, the employees who'd become friends, the business partners who'd become confidants, the adoptees I'd mentored who'd become success stories themselves. My phone rang. Unknown number. After all these years, I still sometimes answered, curious who it might be. "Emma?" A weak voice, elderly. "It's Patricia." My stomach clenched. "How did you get this number?" "Please, don't hang up. I'm dying. Lung cancer, stage 4. I have maybe a month." I waited, saying nothing. I know I don't deserve to ask anything of you, she continued, her voice breaking. But I need to see you, to apologize in person, to try to make things right before I go. You can't make things right, I said flatly. You had 23 years to make things right. You chose cruelty instead. I know, you're absolutely right. But please, Emma, let me try. I thought about Richard's letter. His deathbed apologies. They'd mattered, even though they couldn't undo the damage. They'd given me closure I didn't know I needed. Maybe Patricia deserved the chance to try. Or maybe I deserved the closure of hearing her admit everything. 1 meeting, I said. 1 hour. And if you try to manipulate me or make excuses, I'm walking out. Thank you, she whispered. We met 3 days later at a coffee shop, neutral territory. Patricia looked ancient, ravaged by cancer and age. She was 73 now, frail, and hollow-eyed. She started talking before I even sat down. I was a terrible mother to you, not just neglectful, actively cruel. I made you feel worthless because... She paused, tears forming. Because you reminded me of my failures. What failures? I couldn't have children naturally. Took me 8 years and 3 miscarriages before Victoria. David was another 4 years of struggling. You were supposed to be easy, the solution to my maternal inadequacy. But you came with baggage, grief, needs I didn't know how to meet. So you punished me for it. Yes, she admitted. I punished you for being human, for needing more than I could give, for making me feel inadequate again. And I let Victoria and David treat you the same way because it was easier than admitting I was wrong. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm dying, and I can't take this guilt with me. Because you deserved better, and I want you to know that I know that. Because Richard was right about everything in his letter, and I need to admit it out loud. We talked for 2 hours. Patricia told me things I'd never known. That she'd fought with Richard about me constantly. That she'd intercepted letters from Helen. That she'd deliberately excluded me from family photos to erase evidence of my existence. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said finally. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know the truth. To understand it wasn't about you. It was always about me, my insecurities, my failures as a human being. You're right, I said. You don't deserve forgiveness. But I'm going to give it to you anyway. Her eyes widened. What? Not for you. For me. I'm tired of carrying anger around. I'm tired of letting what you did define any part of my life. So I forgive you, Patricia. I release you from the debt you owe me. But that doesn't mean I want a relationship. It just means I'm done letting you take up space in my head. She sobbed then, ugly and broken. Thank you. You're a better person than I ever was. I know, I said, and stood up. Goodbye, Patricia. Goodbye, Emma. I'm proud of you. I know I have no right to be, but I am. I walked out of that coffee shop and never saw her again. She died 3 weeks later. I didn't attend the funeral, but I sent flowers with a card. You acknowledged the truth. That's something. Rest in peace. On the 10-year anniversary of that phone call, I threw a party at the flagship Golden Dragon. It wasn't about celebrating rejection, but about celebrating everything that came after. The restaurant was full of people I loved, people who loved me back. No one there had ever made me feel less than. No one there had ever excluded me or told me I didn't belong. I stood up to make a toast, looking around at the faces of my real family. 10 years ago, I said, my sister told me not to come to Christmas dinner because I wasn't real family. My mother laughed in the background. In that moment, I felt more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. Everyone was quiet, listening. But that phone call was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to stop chasing approval from people who would never give it. It pushed me toward my grandmother Helen, who taught me what real love looks like. It motivated me to build this. I gestured around the restaurant. All of this. The success, the empire, the purpose. I raised my glass. So here's to rejection. Here's to being told you don't belong. Here's to every door that closes in your face. Because sometimes those closed doors lead you exactly where you need to be. To close doors! Everyone cheered. Later that night, I stood alone in Helen's apartment, looking at her photos, at the life she'd built, at the legacy she'd left me. My phone was off. The Morrisons couldn't reach me even if they tried. I was free, truly free, of their influence, their cruelty, their existence. I thought about that scared 29-year-old who'd stood in her tiny apartment, crying into ramen, believing she was worthless because the Morrisons said so. I wished I could tell her, hold on, it gets better, so much better. The rejection wasn't the end, it was the beginning. And everything that came after, the success, the love, the purpose, it was all worth it. Even the pain was worth it, because it made me who I am. Emma Chen, survivor, entrepreneur, success story. Not the Morrisons' adopted daughter. Just Emma. Finally, fully, completely myself. And that was the greatest inheritance of all.